Hey, just before we get started, you're about to watch a video all about business and products that totally failed. I've got a new channel called Business Blaze. Some of the ones you're about to see, we did extended versions of on that channel. It's similar to this, lots of facts and stuff, but also we make a lot more fun of the companies. So if you think that could be interesting for you, if you want to see a little bit of a more cut loose video, please do check that out. It's linked to below. And let's get into today's video.
The last couple of decades of the tech age has introduced some of the most incredible advances we've ever witnessed in human history. Consider the fact that you have most of our knowledge as a civilization available in your pocket at any given time. It's pretty incredible. Of course, some of the things that were touted as the next big thing in the tech realm did not quite set the world on fire. They, in fact, may have set other things on fire, quite literally. They can't all be zingers, and that's why today we're presenting some of the worst product failures that have ever been launched upon the world. Number 10. Betamax. Even though you can now watch a 4-hour movie on a device small enough to get lost and become property of the couch gnomes forever, it wasn't always that way. People obviously used the DVD format for a while, but before then it was a world dominated by VHS. The video home system looked to have a rival rising up in the late 70s in the form of the Betamax system. Some people to this day claim that Betamax quality was better and that other factors caused the system to not catch on. That would be false. VHS also had the side benefits of costing less and having a lot more movie availability, sure, but VHS tapes also looked better, especially when Super VHS came out in 1987. The thing that probably stings the most is the fact that Betamax was actually winning handily for quite some time. The final nail in Betamax's coffin turned out to be porn. When that industry chose VHS for their discerning customers, that was it for Betamax. Number 9. Apple Newton. Believe it or not, there was a time when Apple didn't rule the world. After a huge chunk of relevance in the early 1980s with their Macintosh line, they actually had quite a bit of downtime. During this period, one of their proposed items was the Apple Newton, which promised to be a world-changing personal handheld assistant. It was unveiled in 1992. Its main appeal was that it promised to fit into your pocket. It would have a stylus and could work with either Mac or PC. Another intended killer feature was that it would recognize handwriting. And it didn't really do that. The feature was so broken that the Doonesbury comic made fun of it nationally for a week. Steve Jobs, who had been relegated to the sidelines at Apple for some time, famously hated it. Number 8. ESPN mobile phone. ESPN is the worldwide leader in sports. They offer unrivaled access to your favorite teams and players and have helped build the 24-hour news cycle for sports that we know today. They are also incredibly, shockingly, astoundingly bad at things outside of that area of expertise. For some reason, only known to the house that Chris Berman built, they decided in 2005 to produce their own mobile phone. Mobile ESPN was a cell service that was supposed to be centered around the sporting world for whatever reason. Whereas the technology of phones at the time was still in its infancy, mobile ESPN would provide its own phone that would excel at browsing the ESPN website and getting the latest scores. The phone itself cost $300, with monthly data skyrocketing as high as another $200. Steve Jobs, when meeting with an ESPN company man, called it the dumbest fucking idea I have ever heard. It folded less than a year after being announced. Number 7. PlayStation Home. Imagine Facebook, where you can meet every type of person you could imagine from all around the world, but a digital version populated with buildings and avatars with endless possible interactions. Unless you were a female, in which case there were 1,000 dudes trying to air hump you on screen. It came to life on PlayStation 3 in 2008. It took what seems like years to install all the software for the system. Promises were made of all sorts of games in-app to play and all sorts of extra rewards to reap. What it ended up languishing around as was a slightly beefed-up chat vehicle. It also had tons and tons of ways for you to spend your money. Sony finally pulled the plug on Home in 2015, unable to find a fun way to steal your money. Number 6. LaserDisc. The 1980s and 90s saw quite a few video formats fighting it out for viewers' choices, including DVD, VHS, and LaserDisc. LaserDisc was caught in the battle of too many choices. It had two sides, and you flipped it to watch the second half of a movie. But since VHS had continued dominance even through part of the 1990s with its cheap cost, LaserDisc really never had a shot. One annoyingly glaring mistake was that you couldn't record on it, and much like the Betamax story, VHS tapes were just so ubiquitous at video stores, in homes, and yes, in porn, that LaserDisc really never had a fighting chance. Number 5. WebTV. In 1996, WebTV was launched, promising those who didn't have home computers a similar experience on their televisions. Oh, and by the way, these were not pre-existing televisions. You had to buy a modified TV-like device that would then take you to the internet and beyond. It was a gamble they took, thinking that people were gathered around a television anyway, so that's where they'd like to do their interneting. Two things happened that killed WebTV: the rise of cell phones and the lowering price of PCs. Oh, and also, imagine trying to read websites from the distance that you watch TV. It just doesn't work. Microsoft didn't care though, and bought into the device for $425 million soon after it launched. Surprisingly enough, WebTV limped along for years, morphing into MSN TV in 2001. Finally, they showed mercy and killed it off for good in 2013. Number 4. Microsoft Zune. Apple's iPod came out in 2001, completely changing the way the world experienced and interacted with music. Whole music libraries were now traveling around with you in your pocket. Microsoft saw this revolution and wanted in, but instead of making a great music player that was easy to add music to, they pooped in a package and expected you to buy it. The quality of music on the Zune was actually fine. That wasn't really the problem. It was just that 5 years after the iPod became the world leader in tiny music players, it was simply too late to compete. It might have had a chance if the tech was great, but it wasn't. Everything Apple did for their player was already kind of perfect. The Zune didn't try and do anything better. Number 3. Eons.com. Social networking for baby boomers. Picture all of the great things about your preferred social media sites, be it the opportunity to reconnect with old high school friends, or to slide into some unwitting person's DMs. Now imagine that potential for creating relationships over vast units of distance and time, but with really old people. 2006 was the year that someone decided, well, hey, we've got dedicated hookup websites for Christians and farmers, why not let old people have a turn? It was the same guy who founded Monster.com who was guilty of that sentiment, and of no shock to anyone, it didn't catch on. The reality is that the 50 and up crowd just aren't that likely to turn to the internet for a lot of things, let alone love. It lasted only 6 years, even in the age of Viagra. Number 2. Google+. What if there was Facebook, but not fun? That's what the unassuming public was asked when Google Plus debuted in 2011. The public decided they were going to try it, and Google Plus at its height boasted more than 190 million users. The problem was some of those users weren't really using it. That's because it lacked fun things like features and interactivity. So people may have seen it, they may have registered, but after farting around on it for a while, they just gave up. It also had a fatal security flaw, which led to hundreds of millions of users having their information compromised. Add to that a ridiculously stupid mandate from Google for users of YouTube and other Google services to have a Plus logon, and you have all the makings of an unqualified failure. Number 1. Galaxy Note 7 Galaxy Fold. Remember when you bought that great phone that was feature-rich and ahead of its time, but also exploded sometimes? Well, Samsung remembers. The Galaxy Note 7 was launched in 2016 to rave reviews. 1 month later, a significant problem became evident. Because of battery insulation issues, some of the devices were catching fire and exploding. This is not a feature Android users usually clamor for. 2.5 million Galaxy 7s were recalled, but this is not the time Samsung's Galaxy line really crapped the bed. 2019's Galaxy Fold promised to offer a foldable phone that would open up into a mini tablet, which is pretty incredible, right? The reality was that it rushed to market before crippling errors in its design were addressed. It was pre-orders and tech companies that saw the defects before the official public release. The hinges that held the two panels together would be rendered useless if even little specks of dirt or dust got inside. And people thought the protective display cover was only temporary and meant to be removed. Once taken off, the display encountered all sorts of errors. It was immediately cancelled before release and pushed back several months. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you enjoy these sort of business stories, I've got a new channel called Business Blaze. It's a much more laid-back format to this sort of channel, so if you like your facts with a few jokes thrown in, please do check out that channel. It's linked to below. And as always, thank you for watching.